everyone, and welcome to the Squad Room Podcast, the place for cops who want to transform their leadership, create more resilience, and generate more balance in their life. On this show, we cover the tactics and strategies you can use every day to create a life worth living, both in and out of uniform. My name is Garrett Teslaw, and I'm a full-time lieutenant for a sheriff's office in Southern California, and I'm glad you're with us today. Before we get to our guest, I want to remind you of a few things. First, if you're on social media, make sure you're following us at The Squad Room and that you've liked our Facebook page. Also, make sure to join our Facebook group. Just search The Squad Room group to join. But most importantly is that you head over to thesquadroom.net and get signed up for our mailing list. People on that list get exclusive access to free resource downloads and a weekly email from me on things you need to know about. I also send out content that's exclusive to that list, so don't miss out on something that can help you in your life or in your job. Join our list at thesquadroom.net. This episode is sponsored by OfficerPrivacy.com. In the age of the internet, social media, and smartphones, there's so much amazing information at our fingertips. I can research any topic or person I want to and learn all about them, their family, and way more information than I really should be able to. The problem is, people can do that research on us too. Whether we like it or not, our information is on the internet, out there for people to find, even the bad guys. Just accepting this and doing nothing isn't an option. We as cops have a giant target on our back these days. Sometimes that's literal and it's life or death, and other times it's just dealing with potential harassment. Either way, we don't want to expose our families to these risks. Being careful about what you post on social media doesn't go far enough. It's easy for a bad guy with an iPhone and free Wi-Fi to hunt you down. That's why OfficerPrivacy.com exists. My friend Pete James is the founder, and he spent 25 years in law enforcement here in California, using much of his career to hunt down the criminals and evidence on the computers and the internet that we now use. Pete knows how easy it is to find you, and since he's one of the good guys, he can help. OfficerPrivacy.com offers 2 packages to choose from to help you clean up your side of the internet. Their premium service allows you to sit back and let the professionals do the work, where they will work to scrub the internet's top 50 people search sites that can expose your home address. Then they work to maintain your privacy by monitoring those same sites. If you show up again, they will remove you again. They also offer an at-home solution for those of you that have the time and the technical ability to do it yourself. I don't, so that's why I use their premium service, but you can do it all yourself using their proprietary software. You can remove yourself and your family members from these same top 50 people search sites on the internet, and then use the software to conduct audits as often as you'd like to make sure that you haven't been added back. To learn more about how you can keep safe, check them out at officerprivacy.com/thesquadroom. When you sign up through that link, you'll get a free USB data blocker, and your first month of monitoring is free. That's officerprivacy.com/thesquadroom. You know, when we think about the equipment we carry with us on our person, we often assume that it's our sidearm that's the most important. But I disagree. Sure, it's important. But think about how important your radio is and how often you use it. Statistically, you're likely to go your entire career without ever firing your sidearm. However, you won't go more than a few minutes in patrol without using your radio. It's your lifeline to the outside world. It's how we call for help, set up a perimeter, request an ambulance, or maybe a supervisor. And think about it. If you do end up using your sidearm on duty, it's very likely that the next thing you'll use is your radio to tell dispatch shots fired. Our radios are incredibly important to our jobs and to help keep us and our partners safe. And it's important to make sure that you're using quality equipment. We can't control the quality of the radio we're issued by our department, but we can often control some of the accessories that we use to make them better and make us safer. I'm proud that ComGear Supply is a sponsor of this episode. Head over to ComGearSupply.com and you will see their massive inventory of microphones, earpieces, speakers, batteries, headsets, push-to-talk sets, and everything else you need to help you stay in comms and stay safe. Their customer service team will help you make sure you get the right accessories compatible with your system. Now here's the coolest part about ComGear Supply and why I'm so proud that they work with us. They have a line of duty protection warranty on many of their products. Yeah, that's right. If your gear ever breaks in the line of duty, they'll replace it. And prices are tax-free, and it's always free shipping on orders inside the U.S. and even to some parts of Canada. Go to ComGearSupply.com right now and use that coupon code THESQUADROOM to get 10% off your order. Make sure you also follow them on Instagram at ComGearSupply and let them know that you appreciate their support of the show. My guest today is Jeff Halstead. Jeff is 2 things. One is he's a returning guest of the show. He's been on before, and he's also what I like to call an FOS, or a friend of the show, a guy who continue to correspond with after their appearance, someone who I've sought out advice from in the past, someone who I truly consider a mentor. Jeff did about 21 years with the Phoenix PD before being picked up by Fort Worth, Texas as their chief of police. We'll let Jeff tell his entire bio here in just a minute. But for those who don't know, Fort Worth, a very, very large city in Texas, if you're listening from out of the country. But even then, you've probably heard of it. And Jeff transitioned out of full-time professional law enforcement into full-time professional entrepreneur. And that was the discussion part of our last time that he was on the show. His company, Evertel, has become a game changer in the communication space. And I thought it'd be a great time to have him on to talk about the number one complaint of every cop I ever talked to, which is the lack of communication in their agency. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Garrett, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm really proud of what you're accomplishing, not just for the profession, but for all the people that are going to serve as we move on to other stages of our life. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. So I just keyed in on what we're going to talk about today. But before we get to that, I gave the quick bio of your history. But can you share with our audience, because we got a lot of new listeners from the last time you were on, your history and some of the things that you've done in your career, particularly when it comes to how you've had to, adapt. Well, we'll talk about adapting and communicating throughout the ranks as we go. But give us the brief on your bio.
Yeah, no problem. And please cut me off. I love to tell stories. So you cut me off when I have gone too
I
long.
love a
But
good cop story, so I'm gonna
oh,
let you
okay,
run.
good. Well, I didn't want really to be a police officer. I was in restaurant management in 1985 to 88. And when I got married in 1987, I thought, man, everybody I'm working around in the restaurant business is divorced or an alcoholic. And I don't want that for my life. So from Houston, Texas, we moved with no jobs to Phoenix, Arizona, and nobody was hiring. So the police department was hiring. I thought, well, I'm in pretty decent shape. I can run. I can do this job. So I went to the police academy in 1988. My claim to fame is there is still policy at the training academy. I got a written reprimand from my graduation speech from the Phoenix Police Regional Academy. I say that because you can screw up really, really bad in your agency and you can still do some good things, which I did. But I spent the majority of my time, first 5 years, all patrol. I went into community relations, promoted early. The only reason I promoted early is I kept working for non-caring supervisors. And it kind of bothered me that, and I remember my one sergeant told me, well, if you want to make a change, then you need to promote. And so I got promoted to sergeant. At sergeant, I did 8 different jobs as a sergeant. I really, really enjoyed being a sergeant. Probably my favorite job. Traffic investigations, community relations. I was PIO for Chief Harold Hurt when he was Phoenix PD. PIO my direct boss was the chief. So I was privy to a lot of extremely interesting conversations, and I saw how an organization is run, which was mind-boggling to me as a sergeant. 1999, I took the lieutenant's test, promoted, went back to patrol, loved that job, and then went to specialty units after that: tactical response, downtown operations, dignitary protection, homeland security, homeland defense after 9/11. And then after probably and then sadly, I had to go to internal affairs. I was called by the chief as a lieutenant to go to internal affairs for 13 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. And my job was to investigate executive staff misconduct. So my first day in internal affairs, I had to investigate the chief of police. Not fun at all. But I was there for both unions because there was not parity among misconduct investigations. And I brought parity to that and fairness on both levels. We actually renegotiated a couple of the contracts so that there was an equality, regardless of rank, that misconduct was treated fairly, which benefited a lot of the officers and supervisors. Then got promoted to commander in 2005, signed to Homeland Defense, Homeland Security, and I ran the state's Fusion Center. My Probably my most rewarding thing was running Super Bowl 42 as a lead planner. That was awesome. We instigated a what they call the Phoenix Traffic Plan, and it's really a combined effort of 11 jurisdictions contributing resources and allocating the responsibilities fairly so that it's not just one city occupying all the overtime and special events. We did it as a team, and it was really cool. I didn't want to be a chief, but my chief told me after Super Bowl 42 that I was not going to be considered for an executive staff promotion because of the diversity makeup that was needed. And he said, as soon as I promote these next three minorities, then I can promote you. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. And he wanted me to mentor those three minorities who were all really good friends of mine. So I started testing for chief's job, and the first one I put in for, I got. So moved to Fort Worth as an outsider, absolutely changed the organization and the culture after learning and respecting the values that made them successful. And then we led that organization. And I say we because I kind of add myself, but it's really the street cops and the sergeants. We drove down crime 26% in 6 years with zero additional staffing and less spending in overtime, because I simply allowed people to do their jobs related to crime suppression the way they wanted to within a confined parameter space. And then I was very lenient on misconduct as long as you didn't commit a crime, intentionally violate civil rights, or steal for the organization. If you did one of those three, I fired you every single time. The other stuff, we went into a training mode to enhance their training and make them better after a disciplinary process. Enjoyed that time, but political issues and a very, very frustrating political environment, I was like, this ain't for me anymore. And I decided to retire. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, and I mean, you were in Fort Worth 6.5 years or so, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like twice the lifespan of an average chief in the United States.
Yeah, and if sadly, if you Google me, you will see my first 6 months. I had not just a national use of force incident, which was absolutely here for. It was an in custody death with a 54-second taser delivery. I did not fire that officer because she did exactly what she was trained to do. The problem was the previous administration canceled all mandated in-service taser training. She hasn't been advanced in-service training on that taser weapon for like 3 years. I
Mm.
didn't give her discipline. I just gave her a written reprimand and sent her back to advanced training. But I took heat for that. And then sadly, June 28th, 2009, the Rainbow Lounge, that was a global protest incident where I was the second most hated man in the LGBT community across the United States. But we built that relationship to be extremely successful and progressive within a year. But that's where all my gray hair came from. Was probably 2009.
The story reminds me of another guest we've had on the show, a colleague of yours, Nick Metz, from Aurora
Yeah.
PD in Seattle,
Yeah,
who
Nick and I were friends in Major City Chiefs. He had a use of force incident that was targeted and highlighted aggressively, and that was frustrating for him.
very much so, and he had a very high profile incident of an officer drunk on duty in a city car, passed out at a light, and officer, you know, went and got help and fell on that sword, but also acknowledged the challenges that they were, suffering from. And Nick stood up for him and said, this it's not right to fire this gentleman when he's, when he's willing to take ownership of it, but also when he acknowledges that there's a problem that's probably caused by the job itself. He gave him everything but termination, but he stood up for him very publicly, and he took some punches for that.
Yeah, I sadly in that 6+ years, there was 1 year where I had 16 DWIs
Mm,
within Fort Worth PD. Three of them were on duty. Two of them were on duty in uniform. It
goodness.
was a culture shift that had to occur, and from that point forward, I had to go zero tolerance. If you're going to get popped for only because one of our on-duty DWIs killed a mother of two on her way to McDonald's to get a Happy Meal 2 days before Christmas, you cannot recover from that without taking extremely
Sure.
aggressive action. And that was within the year of the 16. I was 8 times the national average. It was a very, very rough year for our organization, but we turned it around, and we
Hmm.
actually instituted some progressive programs that helped our employees. You are right, as was Chief Metz. This job brings on so many stressors, and the balance of those stressors sometimes results in behaviors and undesirable things that occur off duty or on duty, including prescription medication, alcoholism, and things to combat the stressors. We have to be sensitive to that and get people help and support.
Hmm. So we're kind of framing the conversation today through the idea of communication within our agency, and I have to laugh at two things at the very beginning of your story, of your bio, that you fled the restaurant industry because of the high alcoholism and divorce rate, and you landed in policing. The irony
Shows you
should
how naive I was.
that shouldn't be lost on anybody. But communication, you got written up for your graduation day speech. And so here is that, that's a good place to start. You're the new guy, literally the new guy, and you miscommunicated in some way, or that at least someone else thought you did at least. You know, what what was it about that sets, what was improper or set someone off, or if you recall, and in hindsight, as was time on, would there, I guess I'm kind of trying to get to the communication from the brand new guy to the rest of the agency, or the next level of chain, or the vet, the older officers. Like, where does that communication start, or how do you communicate as the new guy?
Oh boy. I'll go back to the speech. I followed you know, the the training academy protocol. My speech was reviewed by the sergeant, lieutenant, and the captain, now commander over the training academy. We had a regional training academy, so there were like 9 different agencies in our class. I think we graduated 42 people. My speech was reviewed word for word, and then on the bottom right corner of the pages are different initials by the color of the rank that approved my speech. I read that exact speech, got a standing ovation. My sergeant and lieutenant said they wanted a humorous speech. I delivered an extremely humorous and animated speech. It was hilarious. There were 2 chiefs of some of those regional agencies that didn't think my speech was that funny, and they called our chief of police, Ruben Ortega, um, that weekend and Monday morning, first day of post academy, which we get these 2 days, 16 hours of post academy training, learn the MDTs and stuff. I got my ass chewed in front of the entire class, and then that chain of command who approved my speech then told internal affairs they had no idea where that speech came from. My FTO sergeant said, "Listen, you're on probation and can be fired at will. My advice to you, do not make an issue of this. Take this minor discipline and then remember how this culture works." And I did. Even though I had that speech, still have it today. And it had the initials on there. I decided, you know what? I'm going to let this go and I'm going to be a better person for it. I'm going to move forward. With that said, and I think you meant by new guy, like going into Fort Worth and being the outsider coming in to make change.
Well, in any situation, if you're the rookie going into FTO and you got to communicate with officers or commands, I mean, I remember being very intimidated by that. Having to like interact with a lieutenant in the hallway was all of a sudden like felt like a life or death scenario. And then as you rank up, you have more people you need to communicate to. You have different priorities. You have a different lens of the agency, so different things. Like, I mean, there's really the stages of all of this, but for that question I'm specifically talking about, what was that like as the new guy to come in? And then I think the story you told, I think, is one that many people will experience, where all of a sudden the people who were there patting you on the back and nodding in agreement, all of a sudden disappeared when the heavies got involved. And that could really burn somebody too. Like, I could really like fry you on an agency very quickly, or like create a lot of like angst and bitterness. But didn't sound like that did that for you.
No, thankfully, I had still have an amazing spouse who listened and supported. I've been married 35 years now, and I will say one thing. What you said is absolutely right about that kind of an incident can actually just follow you forever. My FTO sergeant, Sergeant Randy Force, also a mentor of mine. His advice was key because those 3 people that reviewed and pretty much lied, they were banished from the academy immediately. I don't think they ever had a decent job the rest of their career. I know the captain for sure was passed over for an executive staff appointment over a dozen times. Funny, 17 years later, when that captain, now commander, retired, I took his vacancy position number, and he never ever knew I was that recruit that got him kind of banished. And I actually admitted that, confessed to it at his retirement party, which was funny then, but it was not funny 17 years ago when I was getting chewed out.
I
So,
imagine.
but that new guy, we have to listen more. I think the profession now is less on that paramilitary drive and intimidation. And there a lot more collaboration and teamwork and camaraderie, I think, today, from what I've seen, and I've been in agencies in 40 states and 6 countries. There is still an intimidation factor, without a doubt. There always will be. But I do think there is now creative leaders and empathetic leaders that really want to get to know you and value your input, regardless of rank, seniority, time on, everything. And then that's a little bit different. But in my career as the new guy, I always just listened. And then I tried to find someone that had an amazing reputation and asked them to help me be successful in my new position, my new rank, or my new assignment. And that benefited me greatly.
Hmm. So as we, promote and you move into different assignments, like I mentioned, you become a sergeant, and that changes your perspective a bit. And then lieutenant again, you have different demands. You're also given different information, usually from the top down, that you may not have access to as a line level officer, that might color your decisions a little differently. And we end up with this disconnect that everyone talks about, like we were talking before I hit record. But you go to any agency, and I think you ask what's the biggest complaint you have about your agency. It's good. They always say it's the communication. We don't know what's going on. The boss never talks to us. We don't know why decisions are made. Those are like, it's a cliche because it's true, but that seems to be such a common thread. So as you promoted, not just at chief, but as you promoted, were there things you were able to do, or things that you consciously did to make sure that you stayed in communication with the people on the food chain below you? I don't like the word subordinates, but your coworkers that are less in less rank or whatever. Are there things you did to stay connected to them and to make sure that they understood what was happening and what was going on, or is it a situation where at a certain rank you can't do that anymore?
Oh, well, it was the easiest as sergeant, and especially lieutenant and specialty units. But as a sergeant, when I got promoted, I mean, when I went to a motor assignment, so I was a solo motor sergeant, went through motor training, and then we did daytime traffic enforcement, speed zone enforcement, and then accident investigation. But that I always partnered with my team to work radar complaints with them, instead of the sergeant in briefing just handing out. Jesus, sometimes we'd have like 50 radar complaints. I mean, Phoenix is huge now, 1.6 million people, 550 square miles. It was 3,300 sworn, but my squad was about 10 at full staffing. And when I handed out, I would always put this blue dash at the top, and what it meant was, clear me on the radio when you're working that radar. I want to work it with you. I just wanted to see how they worked. I wanted to support them. I wanted to buy them a Gatorade in the hot summer. I really wanted to just understand their challenges so I could be better and more empathetic. Some of the other motor sergeants didn't like that. I don't think my motor lieutenant cared for it as much, but it enabled me. Motors are a tough group of people to lead because they're very opinionated. But we actually had a blast as a motor team. I'm still friends with almost every single one of them that I have stayed in touch with on in social media. Then, as you do promote up, especially, good Lord, as chief, um, I tried to communicate as best I could. Back then, there was this mass email network. I would blast out an email from my desk, no matter what time it was, about a critical incident, officer involved shooting, injured employee, and I would send it to everyone, just so I wouldn't hear the complaint that we never know what's going on or we never hear from the chief. And then I realized there's tons of rumors going on. I'm like, how are all these rumors going around when I just told them the truth? I just left the command post and told them everything about the scene. And then I found out in an internal audit, only 21% of our 2,000 plus employees even open my email after 4 calendar days. I'm like, well, that sucks. How in the world am I going to get my message out? I can't visit, 114 squads around the city. And honestly, that gave me the baseline of where I'm sitting today, solving that issue, because now it is possible and it's so easy. So when I hear that complaint, I always tell them there's tons of solutions. You just have to, let's say the C word, you have to change, because law enforcement stays gutted into habits, and we have to move forward and actually adopt new change.
What's your opinion on, you know, in a promotional structure, like say a lieutenant or a captain or someone in that kind of middle management area? communicating directly with line level employees. There's a thought that you should only communicate through the rank below you and let them disseminate information out. And there's a seems to be a newer approach of all of those people are within your span of control and you should be interacting with all of them. Where do you stand on that?
I use a phrase, and I taught this my entire career, both Phoenix and Fort Worth. And the phrase is very simple: leadership is not rank. I say that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most powerful leaders I've ever worked around were beat cops, detectives, and specialty unit officers. Bob Ragsdale in Phoenix PD, I handpicked him to be my PIO officer when I was a PIO sergeant. Phenomenal leader, absolutely phenomenal. Never took a promotional test and never ever wanted to, but his influence to hundreds, if not thousands, of cops was just legendary. So I would find people like that, and I would want to meet with them, whether it's one rank down or two ranks down or three ranks down, because they're the informal leaders and they're going to tell me where I'm screwing up or what I'm doing that's great or areas probably where I need to pay attention. Because as that communication goes up the change, it's always positively filtered so that the rank delivering you that information looks good. And I got sick and tired of that filtering where I wasn't getting the raw sentiment of our informal leaders. So my philosophy is those leaders at that level drive the mission and the success of the agency. You need to go talk with them and see what's really going on and how impactful you are. Because sometimes you suck and you really need to go out and find it because they know you're real and you're not going to be have a vendetta against them. So they'll be open with you. But if you ever turn and use it against them, you've lost that connection with that leader forever.
Mm-hmm. Right. How do you, if you're in one of those positions, how do you get a sense that, you're being fed a fairy tale version of the facts or a cleaned up version of the facts? How do you know? Is there a way to know, or you have to begin by reaching out to all ranks so you have this comprehensive idea of what's going on?
Yeah, huh. At some point, mine was the Rainbow Lounge. The way it was filtered to me from my duty chief over the weekend that, hey, boss, this is a nothing deal. We did exactly what we were supposed to do on that bar check. And then our internal affairs investigation was 38 inches thick. It was ridiculous how much information. And the facts there was not the facts I got from the chain. So 6 months as being a chief, I realized I'm going to start going to squad briefings 7 days a week in random times. And there were many, many times I showed up at 10 p.m. on a Sunday just to sit in a briefing with jeans and a t shirt on. And I wanted to see, what are y'all talking about? What are you briefing about? What are your challenges Sunday night graveyard shift when I'm supposed to be sleeping? I'm totally unaware of. And so is the rest of the executive and command staff. And then when I started doing that, word started getting around that this guy will listen. This new guy actually cares about what we're doing. And some guys would be like, hey, I've been on 22 years. I've never had a chief in my briefing ever. And then I thought, okay, we're going to do that. And then many times, if I was out doing my job and I saw an officer on a traffic stop or I saw a crime scene, I would freaking stop my car because I was always in uniform as chief. I enjoyed wearing a uniform. And then I would actually go. And then I made command staff attend all in service training with their direct reports. I didn't want a special training just for command and executive staff because that was softened up. We did all of our handgun qualifications every month with all the line levels. And then we cleaned our guns with them when we loaded our magazines with them and we talked with them. And things started really becoming very, very cohesive. There's always division. We all know that. But at least we were making attempts to let them know and reward them for the hard work they were doing. They were doing amazing work.
Yeah, it's that's amazing and impressive that you put it out. I think that is unusual. That is unusual for a chief to come visit on a Sunday night. Um, but it seems someone was asking me this the other day about if because I'm in a desk assignment right now. I've been there for a long time, and there's no sun on the horizon in terms of like transitioning out of that back towards an enforcement posture position in my own career. And I was being asked if I miss it, and I do miss it, or if I wanted to go back to it. And I was like, I'm 44. I can still do the job and I still enjoy the job. I did an overtime shift a couple weeks ago and ended up in like the gnarliest, worst police chase of my of my life with a kidnapping, and we had to ram a car, and he carjacked a woman. Like, oh God, right? And it was a funny moment for me because I was working it with a bunch of new guys, and the guys right in the pocket of 23 to 25, 27, somewhere in there. And they were all jazzed up and they were all excited. They're all amped up. Like, wasn't that so much fun? And here I am, 44. I got my two kids at home. I'm thinking liability and all these dangers and things that are going on. I'm like, no, no. 15 years ago, that would have been a blast. That would have been a blast. And if I was your age today, it absolutely would have been a blast. But your perspective changes as you go through your career in terms of what you want your day to look like. So with that in mind, someone asked me if I was wanting to return to that, and I said no. And they said, how do you think that might affect your leadership as you work to move up in the organization or your connection to those people? And I said, I don't think it'll affect me as long as I remember that there are people out there doing amazing work that I'm no longer wanting or willing to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Like
does
they're
make
out there.
sense.
Yeah, they're out there on that line doing those things that I have done. I did my time in them, and I'm now moving on from those things. But I think we end up with siloed agencies because as people promote, they begin to forget what it was like to be that guy, what it was like to be excited to get into a miles long pursuit with a carjacking suspect, and it's almost like a cataract, right? It starts to cloud our vision of the way things are, and we just remember the way things were. And that seems to be where a lot of the tension between line and command staff exists. The
Correct.
reality
I
of the way
agree with
things
you.
are, so how do we attending briefings is a great one. There are lots of new ways these days with social media and other things, including Evertel, your company, that can help anyone in a command staff position stay connected. What are those things we can do? Because the biggest fear, I think, for anyone is to realize, like, when they walk in the room, they're no longer, not the biggest fear, but it's a fear for many that when you walk in the room, you realize you're no longer one of the guys. You're now one of quote unquote them. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because, one of the foundations we had when we were building Evertel was the entire world. And I was looking at, so I was a senior consultant for 5 years and went all across the US and the world. And I saw the same issues. I mean, from tiny departments in Minnesota to back east to Connecticut to the UK as Poland. And I was like, it's all the same. And it is, law enforcement has not advanced to where the world communication and collaboration standards have advanced.
Mhm.
So the way global corporations, companies, technology, it doesn't matter, business, investment, they are working at Mach speed. And here we are sending emails and having team briefings and squad briefings. That's if no calls are holding. And we're relying on that. And remember, pre COVID, virtual meetings, that's, for geeks in the tech world. No,
Right.
it's been around for so long. So the foundation of Evertel was, how can we take the public safety profession? That's everything: police, fire, EMS, emergency management, city government, county, state government. And how can we take that institutional expectation of paramilitary, top down, authoritarian style communication and make it collaborative? So there's more teamwork, there's more input, there is more. Cops are funny. And I mean, funny as we have hilarious senses of humor that many civilians just don't get. And
Oh
we
yeah.
like to punch fun now and then as a team. It's good for us as long as it remains respectful and professional. And when it veers off into some of those private Facebook rooms where a lot of people got fired across the US in 2019 and 2020, that's wrong. So we have to remember that we are, government employees, and we have to be extremely transparent. And our expectations of professionalism are higher than any other profession that I know of in the world. With that said, that's why we built Evertel, so that from beat cop to chief, there can be instant, and when I say instant, it's less than a quarter of a second, collaboration, teamwork, camaraderie, squads, units, division, specialty, task forces. You can connect with as many people as you want. It doesn't cost you a penny, but we can now advance communication so that, that archaic stifling of input and teamwork is gone, because now we're advanced like the rest of the world has been for over a decade, and we can move at Mach speed now. And I joked, and I'm not joking about this, I'm dead serious about this, but I had a bunch of chiefs in a room and I told them, wouldn't your missing persons unit love the ability to broadcast an Amber Alert or a Silver Alert to every cop in your state in 3 minutes from start to broadcast? And they're like, that's impossible. And I'm like, nope, I could do it right now on my phone if you just sign up for this free service and you're in. And things like that. I mean, good Lord, the rest of the world is communicating on social media and other forms faster than ever. But what cops don't realize is that these consumer apps that make that so convenient, they're not CJIS compliant. They do not respect FOIA and states' public records retention laws as it relates to evidence sharing. And then if you use those consumer apps, you can get fired and charged criminally, which is happening in 2 major cities as we speak from the George Floyd protest riots and arsons last summer. So yeah, there are changes that have to take place, and we got to advance. But you're right, we can close that. It's impossible for leadership in different ranks to be entirely connected until the past few years. We just got to change. Emails don't work. Emails are horrific. I mean, emails are great for grandmas and grandpas and sharing recipes and things like that, but they're horrific for trying to share officer safety intelligence, things that are going to keep you alive in your shift. You got to get them handed out in a briefing, or they're on an email. Are you kidding me? We got to advance way past that.
What is it? Because I was going to ask that. The standard is you get an email with that BOL or the BOLO, the wanted person. You hope people read it. My wife works in the private sector and she works for a tech company, and the speed at which, like, email, like you just said, email is kind of for the bigger documents that you have to like transmit back and forth, but it's really not a communication tool. They use Slack, which is a common one for companies, but they have 5 or 6 different ways of interacting with each other that are not email, and they're all virtual right now because of the pandemic. And so it's kind of funny. I will sometimes work from home at my desk next to her, and she's got her like high-tech Silicon Valley kind of vibe going over there with all the things, and I'm over there working on my computer trying to just log in to my my network to just get my email, because everything's email based. Is it because employees don't read the emails, or is it because it's slow? I know that if I don't open my email, it doesn't get read for 4 days, 5 days, whatever it is. What are the advantages to bringing more of a connected experience to just the communication itself, just getting it in front of the people? What's the challenge there?
Well, if any agency thinks there is a challenge, I can prove it to them in 15 minutes that there is zero challenge, whether it's financial challenge, a change culture that has to occur in an agency. But the advantages are every single employee in your. So how many total employees do you have in your agency right now?
About 800 total, including
All right.
civilian.
So imagine if there was an officer involved shooting, or sadly, an employee that was injured in the line of duty, T-boned by a drunk at 2 a.m. Imagine you getting a picture or a video or the exact scene photograph to every single employee in a quarter of a second. Imagine what that would do for the informational flow of facts and statistics and what really, really happened to your peer employee. You now have it. You have to wait till you get back to work. You get it immediately whenever you want it. And you, as the end user of that system, can control when I want it to alert me, when I don't want it to alert me. You're in full control of everything. I deal with a lot of executives, chiefs, sheriffs, and, superintendents, commissioners, whatever title they want to put on. And they're like, well, I'm not going to let them carry, their personally owned devices on duty. And I'm like, do you really think they don't carry their phone while they're working? Are you kidding me? They all do. Good God, everyone. Second graders have smartphones now. Come on. So I always let them know, let's embrace that technology. but let's bring some consistency, compliance, and be literally eliminate all risk of litigation and lawsuits and protect our employees, because instant information and intelligence sharing enhances officer safety, and an informed officer is a better performing officer who keeps them safe while working. And we can accomplish that in about a quarter of a second. And it's very, very simplistic. But you are absolutely right. Our company's been nicknamed Slack for Cops when we first started, because it is exactly like Slack, except we have to make it extremely safe, secure, and keep those officers out of trouble. And we do that. And it's very, very inexpensive. And literally, if an agent can't afford it, we'll give it to them. That's how passionate we are about this.
You know, after the riots and unrest of the summer of 2020, I began to get increasingly concerned about the fact there's so much of my life that is out there accessible to the public. And yes, I know that I'm a public figure in some sort of way, but even then, it still makes me uncomfortable. And I've been trying to figure out where the line should be drawn between what is shared on this podcast or on social media or in interviews I give and what should remain private for the security and safety of my family. Even though I'm a public person, that doesn't mean I want my personal information out there for the bad guys to find. I've arrested enough of them in my career that it makes me nervous to think that my family could be exposed to those dangers. Not long ago, a suspect showed up at the front door of my partner's house, 45 miles away from the station. I've had enough of worrying about it and felt completely outmatched by the internet. I mean, it's the internet. Trying to take my name off of Google seems insurmountable, and I learned that, honestly, it is. But there's a lot that we can do to protect ourselves, and that's removing our names from people's search sites and breaking the links between our home address and our names. I learned all this from my friends at OfficerPrivacy.com, who are helping me to clean up my side of the internet. A quick Google search shows just a shocking amount of information about where I live, where I used to live, my family members, their names, their addresses, and even phone numbers. We need help protecting ourselves from the bad guys. You have partners on your beat, so get a partner on the internet. To learn more about how they can keep you safe, check them out at officerprivacy.com/the squad room. When you sign up through that link, you'll get a free USB data blocker, and your first month of monitoring is free. That's officerprivacy.com/the squad room. How many times have you damaged your gear while on duty? Chances are it's a lot. So why don't companies have a protection guarantee to replace gear that has been damaged in the line of duty? ComGear Supply is the first and only tactical communication company that has a line of duty warranty that will cover the damages to some of your most critical communication gear. Every month, ComGear Supply saves cops all around North America about $1,500 because they replace damaged gear due to cracked housing, pulled cables, water damage, and more. Me personally, I always pulled cables on my radio gear. From physical altercation to an accidental drop, ComGear Supply has you protected with that line of duty warranty. You can find tactical headsets, push-to-talks, earpieces, mics, and so much more in their line of duty collection. You can also check out gear from Otto, Xilinx, Invisio, and other reputable brands at the best prices available. You can also check out gear from Otto, Xilinx, Invisio, and other reputable brands at the best prices available. Find all-time favorites like the Noise Barrier Micros from Otto or the XPR Push-to-Talk from Xilinx. With year-round sales, tax-free prices, and free shipping, you're guaranteed to get quality communication gear at a fair price. Go to ComGearSupply.com right now and use that coupon code THESQUADROOM to get 10% off your order. Make sure you also follow them on Instagram at ComGearSupply and let them know that you appreciate their support of the Squad Room. Yeah, so you're talking about moving from email, like a desktop-based system, into something that we all carry with us, which is our phone,
Yeah.
and doing this through an app. Now, you touched on it a little bit, but explain. And I'm guilty of this just like everybody else, but have also cautioned others against it. Before we were issued work phones, which finally they did, but we all often revert back to our personal phones too. Why can't we just text message back and forth or use social media apps to communicate that same exact information?
This is my passionate topic and I get to speak on this a lot, so I'm really, really blessed about that.
I think it's completely misunderstood, so
It
it's a great
is.
thing to bring up.
I'll go with my local example. The worst mass shooting in U.S. history was here in Las Vegas at Mandalay Bay Hotel. The SWAT team that made entry, I know two of those entry members. And once it was Code 4, I mean, they had their entire tactical response unit from multiple cities, counties, all across the state being deployed at multiple Tropicana, New York, because all these echoing calls for service, it was all over the strip.
Mm-hmm.
But once they got in and they realized it was code 4, this is the guy, and the room set up, the SWAT team took photographs on their smartphones and then in their SWAT text group sent out all the crime scene photos, and including the suspect dead, handgun right next to his head. And then once you send a text, you have zero control of where it's going from there. And that is an FBI crime scene now. And within an hour, it was in the hands of a Boston Globe reporter who broke that story on the internet. Our own employees of our company were getting internet feeds of the crime scene photos of Mandalay Bay. So when you send a text, victims information, you work in a sexual assault investigation, you send out victims information on a text, you don't know what they're going to do with that text. And then sadly, the same thing on consumer apps. Here's the issue with consumer apps. You always have to ask, who owns the data? Because in law enforcement and in public safety and government work, when you get a public records request, you have to have access to that data immediately so that you can provide, to whoever the requester was. Citizen, defense attorney, prosecuting, media, doesn't matter. That's the law. When you use a consumer app and you click I agree, they own the data. And you have seen numerous times the FBI has lost the fight against Apple and Signal and other groups. They own the data. And in Signal, they can't even get it if you issued a Supreme Court decision releasing the data. It's not there. Sadly, many SWAT officers and tactical units are using Signal. So are the cartel. So are human trafficking. So are people that institute some of the worst terrorist incidents around the globe. They're on Signal. And they're on Signal because no one can ever find them. But we as cops can't do that. So that's the two primary issues there. And if anyone needs documents about that, please contact me, jeff@getevertell.com, and I will share with you. Not a sales guy. I just want to protect this profession because you're being targeted. I want to stand up for you.
Yeah, it reminds me too of the Kobe Bryant a helicopter
Exactly
crash.
right. And I
Right?
have a conversation with, LASO, LASD coming up here very soon. They just cut massive amounts to their budget,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to lose, I think, 40% of the personnel from COVID mandates. I think that's going to be challenged in California Supreme Court. They may have that backed reverse, but I don't know. But they stand to lose about 40% of their employees that didn't get vaccinated that can no longer work. So how are they going to remain efficient? And then after the Kobe Bryant crash, text photos once again. That's the public doesn't like that at all, and we can't stand to have that negative public sentiment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that both of those look horrible from the outside. And you say we can't use those things, but it's because we have an obligation to the Freedom of Information Act and our state's Public Records Act requirements that we must be able to provide all the data on something or all of the information on something when it's asked for. Certain, obviously, there's restrictions, but the idea being, if I, as a patrol officer, send out some written statement about a case, or it's a BOL, a BOLO, or part of a narrative of something, whatever it is, any information on a case that has to be part of the case file, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and so like we get subpoenas frequently, or I deal a lot with the civil lawsuits against the agency right now, and you you read those subpoenas if you're not careful. That says like any written notes or audio recordings. Written notes means your notepad, stenopad notes, right? You got to hold on to those things. And the courts have routinely said, electronic versions of notes, your iPhone's notepad, same thing. Like
It's
those are
exactly the same.
notes.
And that's
Yeah.
been a Supreme Court ruling that, technology and data transmissions are notes and they are recordings that have to be disclosed within the prosecution of every case. And we don't do that. And that can be a problem in getting people some harsh sentences, especially on appeal when they start digging that social, consumer apps were used and text messages weren't filed. That's a major problem. We have alleviated that with Evertel. But here was the issue. When I first saw all across the U.S. and the world, no one's building tech for cops. It frustrated me,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean related to communications. I went to Silicon Valley, And I talked to many, many powerful people in the tech industry, and their response was, that market is so marginally small for us. We want to build things for billions of teenagers and young adults. You're looking at 800 to 900,000. We could care less to get into that market share. It's not conceivable for us. And
Hmm.
that's how the company was actually formed. No one wanted to do it. We at least had to try to
Hmm.
give the alternative so that you're always protected.
That's a common frustration, I think, when you look at any technological advancement in law enforcement is like so many of our systems look, operate, and feel like software from 30 years ago in the private sector, you know,
You're right.
and it's clunky, it's awkward, it's not graphics based, it's not intuitive, we um there was one software we eventually ditched, that it was a scheduling software, and we were gonna put it into practice, and it just didn't work out. There was all sorts of problems with it. And my statement at the time was, if I have to go to 18 hours of training how to use your software, it's bad software. you
You're right.
know?
You're absolutely right.
And so it's a frustration, I think, for a lot of people that, your ARS systems, your CAD logs, your dispatching, all those things, like, because nobody is willing to jump into this sector and invest in it, these big companies, or at least they weren't in the past. It seems like AT&T and FirstNet might be changing some of that, but
Yeah.
who knows. But in terms of like your sphere of influence with Evertel, is the system set up so that messages are retrievable? Because I imagine anyone listening to this would be thinking like, well, if I'm communicating with my partners, I'm going to maybe, how do you communicate formally within the app so that your information is protected? But if you're also chatting about code 7
Yeah.
or making that joke you were talking about earlier, that's going
Yeah.
somewhere else. Like, how does that all get integrated?
It's very, very easy. And this actually occurs. We have about a 10-minute training that occurs once you actually get the app. And you can go to our website and see this, but uh, very simplistic. If it is work related, it's Evertel. If it is personal related, don't ever put it on Evertel. Every keystroke of data sent is permanently stored in your individual encrypted cloud account. Nothing can be deleted or altered on Evertel. And that's why you are fully protected in every aspect of a city's policy, a data retention by whether it's a county ordinance or your state law, the Freedom of Information Act, HIPAA. When you have a hospitalized felony prisoner and you're guarding them at a hospital and you're texting back and forth about their condition, those are HIPAA laws that you're violating because you're texting about a patient in a medical facility. And you got to be respectful of HIPAA. We take care of HIPAA as well. But remember, 100% work related is 100% Evertel. But if you're going to talk about going to dinner, the fishing trip next month, or your hunting trip with your beer drinking buddies, for God's sakes, don't ever put that on Evertel. And then, yes, you, an individual user, can grab anything you have ever sent, saved, or was ever sent or saved to you in all chat rooms and all direct messages. You can pull that in about 5 seconds from your cloud account from any desktop computer in the world. And then the streamlining of a public records request, media request, or a litigation discovery from a defense attorney is accomplished in seconds, and you're free and clear. Your bosses can get all of that data, so you're out. Just remember, 100% work is Evertel, 100% personal. Don't ever you cannot cross personal professional. That's where we get in trouble in a lot of these closed Facebook chat rooms
Hmm.
is we think, oh, this is all personal. I can talk smack now and disrespect a couple of my peers. Nope, Facebook is not a friend of law enforcement. And trust me, those people that work in a company, they can see your private chat rooms. Don't ever believe you don't think they're watching. They are. We're a very attractive profession, and we're a very colorful profession, and we speak very candid in some of those chat rooms. They're
Certainly.
recorded and they're stored, but Facebook owns that data, not you as a user.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction to make. I want to circle back to the quote unquote old school communication techniques and talk about something you mentioned when you came into Fort Worth,
Yeah.
and that you had made, and I forget how exactly you phrased it, but you made some changes, but only after evaluating and looking at the work that had already been done, or the good work that was being done, and seeing where the needs were where the needs were to make change. What, coming in as an outsider and also coming in as the guy, like, there must be a lot of consternation from the ranks of who regardless of who you are, just because cops like to be, uh, wound up about this kind of stuff, about the new guy coming in and making changes. How did you navigate, like, that process, respecting the fact that you are new there, but that you're also in charge and you're responsible for making changes, and then making the changes with some cultural competency to understand that Fort Worth wasn't necessarily Phoenix?
Oh my Lord, that is probably an hour response, but
It's its own podcast.
but you know what? I can say, um, number one, trust me, I made a lot of mistakes, and I made a lot of errors, and I probably to this day still have some employees of all ranks that think I was a complete jackass, and that's okay. But at least I listened to them, and I can take their criticism without having a vendetta against them.
Hmm.
I enjoyed very, very spirited command staff and executive staff meetings because we were setting the stand, not just me. Yes, I was always held accountable in the media, without a doubt. Good God, I was targeted nonstop by the media, and that's okay with me. But I always told people, the number two in an organization is the greatest rank of everything. They literally run the department, but their name's never in the news. You're not in a lawsuit. You're not being sued constantly. I was. With that said, yeah, the new guy, I saw, like, when I got there, there wasn't an emergency driving policy. And I know that because my third week, I'm driving my family vehicle with my wife, just going to lunch on a Saturday. And this Fort Worth car is going code 3, 60 plus through an intersection, almost hit me. And I'm like, so I called radio and I used my call sign. And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, literally, this West Side Patrol car literally just almost hit me and my wife. What's going on? And then I found out Monday there's no pursuit driving policy or emergency driving policy that has really teeth in it. They kind of do whatever they want. I had to fix that. A lot of people didn't like that. And I got a lot of resistance about having a pursuit policy. But I let the employee association write the first draft of the policy. And I wanted their input because I had to have it meet major city chiefs and like the police executive research forum. They have certain standards and guidelines so that we're compliant. I wanted to hear from them first. The process took much longer, but I also let them write a disciplinary matrix so that everybody got fair discipline based on the historical application of discipline related to like misconduct, so that you can't target someone because you don't like them or they dated your niece or whatever. There's so many goofy rules like that. And then we did that, but I allowed massive amounts of employee input. So if someone were to say, yeah, he was a jerk or a jackass, I can guarantee you they'll also say, but he did listen to us, because I held employee forums 12 times a year, every month, an open forum at the academy. Come tell me what sucks. Come tell me what you need. Come tell me how much training or what equipment you want. And I will get people to research and try to help you. And I did that my entire 6 years. It's exhausting. I'll never do it again. But the agency was actually performing at an efficiency rate that hasn't been seen since. Their crime rate now is drastically climbing, and it's not because of the administration. It's because of the political support of the profession. People just aren't doing their job as aggressively as they used to. And that's a frustrating topic, a whole nother time.
If you got a call today from some major city throwing a whole lot of money at you, would you be a chief again in this environment?
No, but I'd tell them to get on Evertel so that the chief can actually be successful and build collaboration, camaraderie, and allow people to operate at Mach speed. I use this phrase a lot. Our job is to protect and serve, but really our job is to fight crime. We're measured on a success rate of what is the crime rate? Is it decreasing, increasing, or whatever? And I challenge any technology company anywhere in the world. Evertel is the fastest way to reduce crime in America, period. Nobody can touch us, but you got to use it. That's it. Once you use it, imagine in your agency if you had a suspect for a series of sexual assaults, say there are 4 of them affecting 4 cities and 2 counties. Imagine the power once you get a picture or PC to an arrest from your phone, if you had the ability, regardless of rank, to push that to tens of thousands of phones in a half a second. You can do that on our platform, and it doesn't cost you an extra penny. And when people start realizing, holy crap, there is technology out there that makes my job easier, then they contact me and I get them in touch with the support team. Notice I didn't say sales team, support team. And we teach them this is the future of information and intelligence sharing to keep you safe and to fight crime.
Communication has become ubiquitous throughout our lives, I mean, as I'm sitting here talking to you, my phone is vibrating and there's buzzes going off and I'm getting text
Mine
messages,
too. Yeah, and it's a Saturday.
and it's a Saturday, and the Facebook messages and the Instagram posts and the so on and so on and so on. But we have in law enforcement and in public safety in general existed in a manner that has been kind of consistent with what I was talking about with traditional software. Like we're 20, 30 years behind the curve in terms of how we communicate with each other and how to do that safely. So I've been following uh, your work since the first time you were on and we talked about some of these things, and I just think, especially in light of 2020 and everything that happened there, it's incumbent on all of us to understand our responsibilities when it comes to our department data, but also to protect ourselves when it comes to the things we put out online. And there's been so much angst over the last 2 years that so many cops have just thrown up on social media. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
literally
no, you're
vomited onto
right.
social media.
Yep.
That, protecting our communication is really important. But it's one of the it's going to remain the biggest challenge, I think, for any agency. And truthfully, not to pin it on law enforcement or public safety specifically, it's probably the biggest challenge in any organization is the communication. But when we have the tools to do it effectively, and we have leaders who are willing to listen, and not just willing to listen, but like the forums, that's not just willing to listen, that's like actively trying to seek out input, right? When we can put people into positions of rank and authority who have that mindset, then that's how we change this from this constant complaint to now this thing that has been solved.
Right. You're right. Absolutely right. And, for any listener out there, because the tech world is super expensive. It's just ridiculously expensive. And if anyone out there is thinking, "Oh my God, this guy's just trying to sell something," no, I'm not. You can literally, in fact, next week I will be in 4 different cities across Florida because the entire 911 and dispatch profession is so frustrated that all of these different PSAPs and 911 and communication centers across an entire state, they're not linked. We can link them in about 5 minutes. And really, they don't have to pay for anything. It's ridiculous. Once you understand, let's leverage tech to make our profession in we're 3 years ahead of tech right now in our company. So you're actually going to have 2025 tech today. And if any listeners like, I don't believe this, then email me. I will come to your city. I'll take a whole bunch of leaders out to lunch. I'll buy your lunch. And in 15 minutes, I'll show you how easy it is to advance communications technology 3 decades in 30 minutes. And it's really a fun time to have a conversation. And I'll do it. And I ain't going to bill your agency for nothing. I'll come out there just because I want to learn from you. And that's legit. That's how I do my job.
So let me give you a scenario, um, to maybe walk through how this might change, because I think this experience I told you about, this car chase and carjacking, this is a
Oh,
good
yeah,
example.
that'd be great. Absolutely.
Because I think it's sometimes conceptually here on a podcast, we're not. It's hard maybe for people to understand the difference. So, long story slightly shorter. We get a call of suspicious subjects in a vehicle, right? And I'm working an overtime shift, and I'm just thinking not much of it. And I roll up, and it was originally it was a call of a hand-to-hand transaction, and I'm talking to the two people in the car, and this guy asked the driver for his name, and I won't say his exact name, but he gives me something like what's an Williams, I said, okay, how do you spell that? He goes, uh W I no Y no I L L L. No, only two L's. Like he's just like, you're like, okay, this guy's clearly
Yeah.
not giving me his
Yeah.
name. I get the name from the female in the car. She comes back with a restraining order against a guy who is probably the other guy in the car, but we can't confirm yet because he's given us this jerk around story, right? So we're like, well, is she voluntarily part of this or is she being kidnapped? We don't know. And he takes off. So pursuit's on. Now we don't, our policy, as many, if you know the identity of the driver, you're strongly discouraged from pursuing in most cases, but not all. But we don't know the identity of the driver, right? So I'm working with dispatch as I'm driving, 100 plus miles an hour and then 100 plus miles an hour once we get to the highway, trying to figure out who this driver is. Car comes back to somebody who is not clearly, probably not one of the people in the car. And my dispatcher, ends up getting me a booking photo of the restrained party of the female in the car, right? The male subject that is restrained from the female that is in the car.
Correct.
And here I am at 100 plus something miles an hour, opening my email on my work phone to open this email because she sent it by email. And props to my dispatcher who had the foresight to look up a booking photo. And I was able to confirm that this was the guy. So now we know that he's in violation of the restraining order. The challenge here was, by this point, we had terminated our pursuit because he was too dangerous. He was just driving like too much of an animal.
Yeah.
So now Highway Patrol is involved. Highway Patrol has picked up the pursuit and they chase him into a neighboring city. But Highway Patrol then terminates. Now he's in a neighboring city, municipality, and he's tearing through their city and they engage with him. And then we end up at a terminus where he carjacks a woman and we get him stopped. Now, in that scenario, you have 3 agencies involved at different points along a geographic span of probably 40 miles, give or take. Because I'm a sheriff's office, we cover a lot of territory. How would a communication system above and beyond getting an email to me work in that scenario?
All right. So let me make the statement. Our mission is to never take over radio. Dispatch and the instantaneous transmission of that intelligent information is life saving.
Sure.
We don't touch that. Now, when you talked about the dispatcher having the foresight to send you an email, yeah, Johnny, a female Johnny, and Peggy, when I was a rookie, saved me so many times because they were so intuitive behind that desk, miles and miles away. They literally knew my beat. And here they were, probably never even rode the beat in their life, but they dispatched it for 20 years. With that said, so here's how this could help. So in your county, how many municipalities estimate? How many?
7.
Okay. And then what are there 3 other counties you connect in landmass? Maybe
Yeah,
3 or
there's
4.
on the far side of the forest, but we don't count that. So yeah, I'd say 1 on each end really is really how
Okay,
we
so
work.
2 other counties with other municipalities, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so on Evertel, that would be termed regional collaboration, which means that your agency, in advance of this incident, at no charge for your agency or any of those other agencies, you could have connected with every single police officer and sheriff's deputy across a 3-county region, maybe a 20 to 25 city region. And they're all in this encrypted chat room waiting for regional intelligence. So when they took off from you and your dispatcher from their console has access to this regional portal, which is completely free for all of those agencies, now they can run intelligence and share it in a quarter of a second, not taking privileged radio time during a pursuit. And many times the pursuit may not be necessary. And I get heat from this, but I've also buried 3 of my friends who died in pursuits. So I want to always work smarter and protect your future.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as your dispatcher had the info and intelligence, in a quarter of a second, it's on the phone of every police officer on and off duty across a massive region. Now there may not be the need to be as aggressive in the pursuit because someone's going to get hurt or killed in the majority of our pursuits. And with that said, we can now use the intelligence instantly off the radio, but through the CAD MDT or whatever they're using, because it can be connected to every car's MDT, MDCs, cell phones, iPads, you name it. Now that instant intelligence is critical because law enforcement has intelligence faster than the speed of that driving vehicle. And I think that could be key in that type of a situation.
That makes perfect sense because I remember forwarding that email to individuals who
Which
were
is
on the
time
call.
consuming and frustrating, and you don't know when
Yeah.
they're going to get it. But in a regional collaboration encrypted chat room, I know for a fact Baltimore PD has one with over 1,600. I call them meat eaters. These are people that look for bad people 24/7. And the minute somebody pops up with PC to arrest on a felony, boom, it goes into the regional fugitive room. It's first come, first serve. It's like a fishing dock. And literally, they're finding violent fugitives in minutes. It's crazy how fast it is. And they're connected with all these other people and agencies at zero cost to their agency or to the receiving agency. And I can show you how to do that. So, yeah, it is really, really cool. God, I wish I would have had this as chief because I think we could have fought crime even faster and had an even increased crime suppression success rate.
Hmm. Jeff, thanks for being with us today to talk about
Yeah,
these
you bet.
communication
You
issues.
bet.
It's always a challenge to, in the traditional forms, the verbal, nonverbal. We could go so many different directions on the topic of, I wanted to get into followership and communicating up the chain and down the chain, and because it is such a big topic. But I think detailing how we can protect ourselves is very important, and also how we can work as we transition in different parts of our career. That was the other theme we talked about today, was transitioning through different ranks or different parts of your career, how that changes or how you need to be aware of it might possibly changing, is real valuable to people. So thanks for being with us.
Hey, you bet, Garrett. Thanks so much for your service. You stay safe out there and all your listeners. We absolutely respect the heck out of you. So stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're new to the show, make sure you check through our catalog of episodes because you're going to find some amazing guests and some great actionable ideas you can take into your day. Also, I want to offer you something I'm very excited about, and it's absolutely free. It's my Tactical Tuesday newsletter. Every Tuesday, I want to bring you a few tactics, tips, and strategies to help you succeed in the week ahead. It may be a book I want to share, some gear I found useful, an inspiring quote, or anything else I think you'd like. To sign up for the Tactical Tuesday email list, you can visit thesquadroom.net/Tactical Tuesdays, or just text your email address to 805-364-2331. That's 805-364-2331. If you didn't catch that, check the show notes for this episode, and you can find it there, and I promise we won't sell or spam your email address. Before we wrap up, I have a challenge for you. If you got something out of this episode, if you were inspired by our conversation today, I want to challenge you right now to take a photo of your podcast player as you're playing this episode, and I want you to share it with 3 friends, people who you think need to hear what we talked about today. Send them this episode and recommend that they listen to it. Also, please consider leaving a review on the podcast player of your choice. If you have a few seconds, please leave a comment with your review because it really helps us spread the word about the show and it helps more cops find the valuable lessons that we have here. Also, join us on Facebook at our Facebook group, follow our page, and on Instagram at The Squad Room. Special thanks to our sponsors for today's episode. First, OfficerPrivacy.com. If cleaning up your name on the internet and making it harder for criminals to find you is important, check out the deal they have for you at OfficerPrivacy.com/The Squad Room, where you'll get a free USB data blocker and 1 month of free monitoring when you sign up. Also, special thanks to ComGear Supply. If you're looking for the best prices and industry-leading warranty coverage on your radio equipment, make sure you check them out and use the coupon code TheSquadroom to get 10% off your order. Also, there are some other great companies who support the podcast and support you as well. Go to thesquadroom.net/support to see exclusive deals from Signature Coins, Hard to Kill Fitness, Onnit, Ranger Up, Hardhead Veterans, and Audible. And if you're looking for the best-fitting ballistic helmet that exceeds NIJ standards and won't break the bank, check out hardheadveterans.com and use the coupon code SQUADROOM to get $20 off your helmet. All right, until next time, take care of each other and stay safe.